and welcome back to a new episode of the HoriZone Roundtable after a very long layoff. Sorry, guys, but we're back. This is Bob McDonald. I am on Twitter at Bob McDonald, and as always, coming back with me again is Jimmy Lemke.
I would say mostly. I don't know about quite always, but yeah, well, always. Whatever, we'll go with that. 9
out of 10. 9 out of 10.
Yeah. It's 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Okay, I see how this pod's gonna go today. Jimmy's at PantherUde on Twitter and at PantherUde.com.
Yes, I still am technically.
So we're in. So we've decided for do we want to say back by popular demand? Because I would say yes, only because we apparently developed in the last since we last did this podcast some weird cult following, like the series Firefly, and
it was weird. I never realized that people actually listened to us. I thought I was just I thought we just decided to record conversations that we would have preferred to just be having. Because
I don't know, it's just
nobody around us wants to talk about it, so we might as well get somebody.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm happy about it. So I'm glad to be back.
One change though, obviously the podcast can be found wherever you find podcasts, as always. Yeah. Be it Google Play, be it iTunes, be it wherever. We got a new site, though, where it's going to be on sportshacks.com, HAX. That's where we're going to be housed at it from here on out. Since last we left, Four Lights merged with a couple of other places, and that's where we're at now. Okay, so I guess first and foremost, it's not exactly HoriZone League, but it's HoriZone League adjacent.
Yes.
I guess we got to say congratulations to former HoriZone League school Loyola-Chicago for making it to the Final Four.
What just happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, Jimmy, you and I have you and I have known the fans of Loyola for many, many years here, so we're happy as hell to see him.
Dude, Big Joe Rambler, I'm super jacked for that guy because he's just one of those long-suffering fans like us, and his team is literally going to the Final Four.
Man, talk about making it count, man. Let me tell you. That is Dude, outstanding for Joe. Outstanding for a lot of the guys out there.
I'm ready to play Jesuit trivia always, forever and always. Jesuit trivia. You've never been to Loyola, have you?
Shout out to all those guys over, and shout out to all those guys over at RamblerMania.net. Man, you remember that site's been up forever and ever and ever, and John C. Thomas, JCT Rambler. Shout out to you, buddy. And Brat. Oh, man. Brat, I know he's still around. So, man, he's been around forever and ever and ever. So, shout out to you, buddy. So, but it does lend to, as happy as we are to see Loyola make it to the show, they're not doing it in the HoriZone League.
Yes.
They're doing it as a member of the Missouri Valley Conference, which they've been for the last 5 years. So
until the Atlantic 10 comes to take them, and then if you talk to the Loyola fans, then the Big East is going to come calling because
possibly next natural progression, I'm sure. But that's so when we kind of look at Loyola, and most recently since last we were on, Valparaiso's gone too. So that's they've gone to the Valley as well. So, I mean, the question that you have to ask yourself is, what do they got that we don't have? Why don't they want us anymore?
It's not a private school thing, and I know that people are going to think it might be because if you look at all of the programs that left the Horizon League and found success. You can throw Notre Dame out because Notre Dame is literally like a flash. They were in the Horizon League and they were established before us. They are not. We were a brief stop for Notre Dame, but look at Xavier.
Yep.
Look at obviously Butler and now Loyola.
Look at Dayton.
The schools that are leaving us are, yes, they are private universities.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's mid-majors that make those leaps that are not, that are not these, private schools. VCU, I think of. George Mason is not a private school. There are schools that get it done that are of both, and I think where you're really going to see, if you really look at it, and I've said it on Twitter, I touched on it, I had a long rant about it. It's facilities. When you have facilities, and that was what made the difference for Loyola. The good news for Horizon League teams is there are a couple that are okay here. We are obviously not there in Milwaukee. I have obviously spent too much of my life talking about it.
Yes.
But Northern Kentucky is fine. Northern Kentucky has a palace of a 9,000 seat arena, maybe too big for what they are, or for what they are at the moment. But who knows? Maybe Northern Kentucky is a school that's going to jump. Wright State is another one that has the facilities. Maybe the public schools that succeed, maybe they have to be really big ones. VCU, George Mason are bigger schools. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I think that I think that you have to have an administration that's run very well, because you have to have people that are willing to either, get out of the way when needed to let these people do their job. You have to have people who are, you have to have people who are able to, identify and hire good coaches. You have to you have to have a supportive community. Not
that
just the athletic department.
Part of that.
Yes.
Well, what's interesting, yes, and
that's not the case in the Horizon League.
No,
you have to realize this is that for the most part, this is not the case. Northern Kentucky is still very much in its infancy as a Division I program.
It is.
So they can get there. Wright State has what I would consider to be a supportive community. The one problem they might have is maybe, it can't be really a playing second fiddle to Dayton, because the area is obviously big enough for them. They average like 5,000 fans a game fairly regularly. It's not like it's a place where nobody goes to games and nobody follows the program. That's the problem at your school and my school. That's the problem at UIC. That's the problem at, Green Bay. They just don't have people to follow them to begin with. But in Youngstown State, it's our conference is starting to kind of take shape. Unfortunately, in from where I'm standing, from my perspective, it's starting to look more like what we are rather than what we have sunk to. We are a lot of schools where commuters are a big part of it. We're schools where we don't have deep donor bases that can put together. Maybe I'm getting older and I want to see us win a national title. I'm going to talk to 3 of my fellow alumni and we're going to come up with $100 million. Because if you didn't notice, that's what happened at Loyola.
Yeah.
That wasn't
true.
You had these old guys that were all around in 1963 and they wanted to see it happen again. They're 2 wins away from a national championship. They're in the Final Four. Because they made facilities a priority. Facilities got them into the Missouri Valley Conference. For you and anybody else who's listening who has not been to the Gentile Center a dozen times like I have, when it was the Gentile Center, 5,000 seats, it was a glorified high school gym. And by glorified, I mean it was just a bigger high school gym. You had pull-out bleachers along both sides. There wasn't anything special about the seating. It was all bleachers. It was bigger. It was 5,000 seat capacity. That's not something that's going to entice a 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid who's trying to pick a university to attend. On the flip side, those facilities aren't the only thing. A much more important part of that support getting the facility, it got them into the Missouri Valley Conference, as you said earlier. The Missouri Valley Conference membership is, for the schools that can use it and take advantage of it, a big benefit.
Yeah. And especially in their case, given that they are in Chicago, and let's face it, at this point in time, even at this point in time in the Missouri Valley Conference, Loyola is Chicago's team right now.
Absolutely. It's a Chicago team in the Final Four.
Yeah, forget UIC for just a second.
Forget Illinois. Forget Northwestern and DePaul. Nobody gives a crap about those schools right now because Loyola up in Rochester.
And we're talking about schools that are in high major conferences. Big Ten and the Big East. Yes, it's DePaul, but still they're in the Big East. If it was something about being a private school that gave them a huge advantage, Loyola wouldn't have been getting their asses handed to them by all of us for years. No, and that's kind of the other thing. It's like, look at him like you're like.
Our head coach used to sit on that bench when we used to beat the crap out of them, and a couple, and then they would, because it was something of a rivalry, they would always hit us back, and they were good. But largely, Loyola was a school that you would see 7th, 8th, 9th out of a 9-team HoriZone League, maybe not 9th, but because that's Youngstown's world. But this is a program that did not win a lot. What happened was they got the facilities. They got an administration that was willing to let Porter Moser come in and do what he needed to do to win.
That's right.
Whatever that was up to Porter Moser. I don't know, how he has done it, because I think if there was a special way he did it, I would love to tell Pat Baldwin how to do it and get it done here. Unfortunately, he for us, we haven't figured it out. He has, but you have to have the support to do it. First, it was those donors and administration that was willing to support him through it. And at the end of the day, they were able to pull it off because they had that flow chart happen. The support got them the donors, the donor money got them the facility that got them the MVC that allowed them to build a Final Four program. End of story.
That's right. So moving on to what was and what we had hoped would be. We got to. Speaking of Chicago.
Yeah.
Not Loyola, obviously, the Chicago team that is currently in the HoriZone League. UIC, who, by the way, is still playing in the CIT. By the way, only HoriZone League team that is actually still playing. Mm-hmm. But one of the players who is not with him is Dikembe Dixon. He, right before the last game of the season, he announced that he was going to be playing professionally, and that was it. So Dikembe Dixon is out at UIC.
It's kind of incredible. It's kind of incredible, but
I would have liked to see him here for another year. I mean,
I would have too. I would have too, because I don't think we ever really got to see what he could be. Then again, I don't. Once Robinson was there and Odiasi was there, he was coming off of the big injury. He wasn't quite the same player that he was that first year. So maybe we're looking at a guy that could have been something a lot more special, but who knows? Maybe we weren't.
So, and now, speaking of Robinson and Odiasi, both of them are gone now. So,
well, because they're running out of, not because UIC did anything wrong. They just ran out of their,
yeah, they're graduating. Yeah, so they've graduated. So they're out of eligibility. So who's next man up in the front court for UIC? I mean, they've got a decent backcourt. The problem is, where do they go from here? I mean, are they back to square one? Well, I mean, it seems to me that they are. I mean, you're losing Tayo Odiasi, who was one of the best defensive players in the conference.
Well, they've got Isaac Bassey, or what's his face? Isaac Bassey coming in. It's a guy who could. I mean, he's gonna have to step in. But
of course he is.
He's a huge dude. Like he's just he's a. I mean, have you seen stats? Have you seen the size of the guy? He's 6'11". I mean, he's a monster dude, but he doesn't put up like. He doesn't. I don't know. The
question is how is he going to shape up against a Loudon Love at Wright State, or I didn't know you love him, Drew McDonald down in Northern Kentucky? How does he shape up against those guys? Exactly.
Drew McDonald's a little bit of a special case. Obviously, he's
But at the same time, you have
a shooter too. Yeah.
So that's true. I mean, he's a little bit more versatile, if you will. But in terms of, I mean, in comparison to big guys, is he more of the Loudon Love mold or of the Drew McDonald mold? Probably. I mean, I'm sure there's somewhere in between.
Probably a little more of the Love mold, but. No, he's gonna have to step in. That's
the thing with Love, though, is that he benefited from the fact that obviously Loudon Love had a lot more talented supporting cast around him with Grant Benzinger and Parker Ernsthausen and those guys who were there. Do you see that with UIC with the Tarkus Ferguson? Do you see that to be kind of a comparison case, or is it just a situation of they're going to be back in the rebuilding mold, and they're going to be back at the bottom half of the HoriZone League again, where they sat for the last 6 years? 6 years before McLean got there. Actually, not 6 years before. Actually, 6 years before McLean got there, and about probably a year or two while he was there.
I think if they can get if Bassey can step in, they can be better than I think they're going to go. The problem is I think that I'm with pretty much everybody else. I'm a little worried that with them losing the really important players, and by that I mean the guys that are getting the rebounds, the guys that are plugging up the middle. Yeah. All those blocks Odiasi got. We're not going to have those guys anymore, so kind of wondering what's the future of that program.
By the way, back to the not to cut you off or anything on the UIC thing, but briefly back to the Loyola thing. At least two or three people of Twitter assumed that you were going to discuss the transitive property discussion about Loyola. So
dude, you want to talk about the transitive property?
No, let's not do that.
For a brief moment, the transitive property, for those not gone, transitive property of college basketball is if you've beaten somebody, you have also beaten everybody that they've beaten.
Oh,
so. And what's funny is that Loyola is one that I have used frequently this year because we beat Loyola and then Loyola beat Florida down at Florida. So they were our gateway into Florida beating SEC teams that would beat everybody else. So then all of a sudden we ended up getting to Villanova eventually. But what's great is that I wouldn't use it for Milwaukee. I would actually use it for Concordia St. Paul that beat Milwaukee. Concordia St. Paul is not even in Division 1.
No, it is not.
And they've won like 7 games all year. But by this wonderful transitive property of college basketball, they're in the fucking Final Four right now. So good for them.
Oh, man. Okay, so now
that's
that
what we can hang our hat on too, yeah. I mean,
great. Now I officially regret bringing that up. Thanks a lot.
Hey, man.
Who do I get to think
if they win a national title, I will literally be able to come out and say Milwaukee by the transitive property is national champions. Right there. Hey, I got to do it in 2010-11 when we beat Butler twice and they were runner-up. So hopefully, yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be fun. I'm happy for those Loyola people. I'm sad that we're not getting to be a part of it like we were with Butler. That we weren't getting to see them later.
And again, it's a little more. I think it's probably a little better with Loyola just because of the fact that you have Loyola fans and Butler fans. I think that's a very, very, very distinctive dividing line. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
I would absolutely agree with that.
That is, yeah. So that's, so this is, yeah. You wish they were still here, and you wish that they were, you like the guys. You wish they were still here, but it is what it is. So, so now that so since we're back on the whole Jesuit kick, let's go to the one school that is still in the Horizon League. That would be Detroit. And dude,
have mercy.
What in the hell is going on over there? I mean, seriously, you have to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, and they're all massively tight-lipped over there. So if you live to be 100, if you get something out of there that makes any level of sense for what kind of season Detroit Mercy had last year, God bless you. Literally, God bless you on that one. Because man, you have Bakari Alexander who gets suspended. And, it took him, 3 weeks to acknowledge that he, in fact, got suspended. That was the first weird thing. And then you have, all of the, Jaleel Hogan comes back and then magically disappears again. I'm sure that there was, I can't remember. Somebody told me what the issue was with him. I think it might have been academic. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, after in the middle of the season, he was gone. And
you don't really want to assume anything. But
I don't know. I don't have a clue. You have a situation where Detroit was in last place in the Horizon League again. I mean, you see, it looked so much like there was so much regression going on. It's not even funny. You had most of the wins came from when Jermaine Jackson was interim. So
is that true?
Yes. When Bakari Alexander was suspended, now that we know he was in fact suspended, the bulk of the games in the non-conference, it was Jermaine Jackson who was the interim, and they were actually doing pretty well they actually did pretty well and won some games under Jermaine Jackson. Then Bakari Alexander comes back and they lose 11 in a row.
Well, we were discussing it before we started the podcast that they're stuck. They're really stuck.
I mean, I can't remember who brought it up, but
he's not like some of the other newer guys.
He's making $400,000 a year. Somebody's got to actually confirm that that's true. That is an insane number to give an associate to use to hire an associate. He makes as much as Scott Nagy does, as far as I understand. Yeah. Scott Nagy, who came from a proven winner in South Dakota State.
Yeah,
getting as much money as that guy, or
what I'll point out
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Even more is Scott Nagy. Not only did he come from a proven winner, I mean, he was the proven winner. He was there for 25 years as the proven winner.
Incidentally, he proved it again this year when they made it to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, but meanwhile, you have, I mean, who thought that was a good idea? I mean, just back up the Brinks truck for Bakari Allen.
And I will say this.
Was it because he was an esteemed alum of Detroit Mercy, that he felt like, he had that background that he really needed, that, he had the background to get everybody back on board. And he had that pedigree from John Beeline in Michigan.
I think that
call me crazy, but having had experience with former, having been in a school that has not ever had really the best of luck with Big Ten assistants, to give him that much money and then that return on investment is a last place in the
Big Ten
last place in the HoriZone League in year 2. And by the way, Corey Allen's transferring.
I mean, the Big Ten is, calling it Big Ten assistants being part of it is a little bit, I don't want to say like disingenuous, but it's like it's painting a broad brush. There are a lot of reasons why people don't work. I think that part of it is I'm looking at a guy who is completely unproven versus somebody who is a winner, but I'm also looking at where they are. Detroit is a program that has always had these problems. Always. I've been around this conference for 13 years. And if it wasn't, if it wasn't, this player, PJ Boutte just got arrested. There's a guy named PJ Boutte. PJ Boutte just got arrested because he was trying to bring a taser into a nightclub because they wouldn't let him in because he was 19. Or like, Carrie Gaither, the athletic director, got they found out that she was banging one of the assistant coaches for the basketball team on road trips. Like there's all of these just this consistent stream of what the heck.
This is not,
it's easy to spot because I'm coming from something similar. I live in a clustered. I live in an absolute, just broken down program.
By the way, I would like to mention
a series of awful 80s. Just it killed us.
But I want to disclaimer this as somebody who has obviously followed this way longer, only because I'm a middle-aged old guy now. Yeah. But in the 90s, in the late 90s, when Perry Watson actually gave a shit. Seriously, when Perry Watson still gave a shit in the 90s, they were a damn good team.
And I also think
they were a good team, and they were good enough that they were a good enough team that they were, that at one point in time, the HoriZone League, or the what the hell is that called now? The Midwestern Collegiate Conference.
By the way, the name of the conference should go back to. If I were,
man,
the HoriZone League is such a terrible name.
And to make things worse, and let's not forget to make things worse, you now have the Summit League, who just,
I was literally thinking the same thing. The Summit League that ripped us off is now better than we are.
Where did we go wrong? Where did we fuck up? I don't know what to tell you.
First off, we're letting in bad programs. And all difference.
To your point of that. Okay. No, we let in 2 bad programs. 2. Oakland was good. Valpo, Oakland, Northern Kentucky, all 3 of them. They're, they were.
Yeah, and when we added Oakland,
Yes.
By the way, if you remember correctly, I broke the story that Oakland was coming to the HoriZone League. And when I was my sources, and I'll say straight out, my sources were a couple chancellors and presidents on the executive council. I was talking to these people, and we were having the discussion of who's the next program.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that there were a couple of them that were thinking, IUPUI is looking pretty nice. And and I was about to have a heart attack. Like, no. And I wasn't the only one that was doing this. There was also
forward 4 years later.
But the others later, and Northern Kentucky were going to do.
Valpo leaves, and we put in IUPUI as a panic ad. They were a panic ad. And what makes things worse? I mean, we spent every HoriZone League fan dumped all over IUPUI from the beginning they set foot in the door. And you want to know something? Half of the HoriZone League basically, you know what half of the HoriZone League teams did to bolster our claim that they were a panic ad and they shouldn't have been there? They all messed the bed and they finished in 5th place in the freaking conference. That's how awesome the conference.
Well, they fell into that spot because this conference has fallen off. Obviously.
You think?
Obviously, but I mean, I'm not looking at 1 year of a team.
You understood Cleveland State and Youngstown State because they were rebuilding with new coaches. Detroit screwed they were a hair away from being in 4th place in the HoriZone League. That is the state of this conference.
Yeah,
where we sit here, we sat there for what? 3 months. We sat there right up until the beginning of the season and just bagged on IUPUI the whole freaking time. Bagged on them the whole freaking time. And they turn around, and even in the non-conference, they weren't really setting the world on fire. So we were like, great job, John LaCrone. Bring them in. Great job, ADs and presidents, for letting them slide on through like there ain't no thing. And then they turn around and finish 5th.
I like how you use the word "ain't no thing."
Everybody, because they messed it. Because the bottom half of the HoriZone League was just a massive dumpster fire this year.
The conference is really down. Detroit's down. Cleveland's down. Youngstown's always down. Us, obviously. Green Bay was not. Was on
Green
the down.
Bay was horrible this year.
Well, Green Bay was on the down. Green Bay is on a downturn.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that Green Bay is in dire straits like we are as a program. Yeah. I would say that Green Bay is just on the lower end of their cycle because no mid-major, unless they have incredible advantages, no mid-major can sustain winning in a good conference all the time.
Oh no.
You're going to be, if you're a big fish in a small pond, it's because you got something special going for you, or you're in a smaller pond than you think, like Belmont was in the Atlantic Sun, and now the OVC is like Murray State with the OVC.
Yeah.
It's a this is a conference that's been down, but it's also a conference that just has there's no confidence, there's no support. This comes back to my point about there not being support at the universities themselves. Specifically, I'm talking about when you don't have the support from the fans and donors. Mm-hmm. You do not have. When you don't have the support from fans and donors, you don't have people who are putting the pressure to make sure that you have good administrators. You don't have the people who are putting the pressure, who may be putting putting their money where their mouth is to make the programs get better. And because you don't have that support, one of the other things is they put pressure on the university administration, not just me talking about Amanda Braun, but people talking to the chancellor, the president of their given university, putting the pressure on them there. That doesn't exist at a lot of our schools. We just don't have that, and that's not because we as a program are bad, or it's not that we as a program are bad. It's just that we don't have the support. Therefore, We have chancellors and presidents that are largely detached. These are almost always academics, because who runs a university? People who've worked in universities forever. Academics run universities. So if you don't put the pressure on them, they are going to take the advice of the people that they know in their minds are the ones that know what they're talking about. So they're going to talk to people in their own athletic department who may or may not have good ideas. They're going to talk to people who are at the conference. They're going to talk to John LeCrone, and John LeCrone is going to think to himself, I really don't want to leave Indianapolis. We should go add IUPUI. I want to make sure that my legacy isn't adding, losing Butler and losing Loyola. I'm going to go get, I'm going to go, let's go have a neutral site tournament. We can get some much needed money here by going to Detroit for the conference tournament.
And we all, but yeah, and don't get me started on that basically window dressing to try to get the Big Ten tournament there. Because that's what that is. That's all that is.
For sure, and that's okay.
So I look forward to because I know that's a 3-year because I know that's a 5-year deal in Detroit with an out clause.
Well, right now. We have the out clauses right now, and I believe it's both for both parties. So
yeah.
Watch, just watch, because it's going to happen. They're going to turn them down.
Duh. Of course they are. And that's, and then, then the real fun begins.
Yeah. Well, the point I'm making is you have to have support from fans. And it's not just showing up in numbers, it's speaking out about things that you care about, and it's about, for the ones that have the money, it's about putting your money where your mouth is. You want to have a lot better program? Well, put your money there. We have a alum at Milwaukee who played, and when I say played, I mean that in the most broad sense, in the early 80s. He's never given a dime to the school. But Amanda Barton latched onto him because he was saying what she wanted to hear, which was, you got to fire this Rob Jeter guy. He sucks.
Brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Just so genius. What his ideas. By the way, the athletic director that, was here before all of the bad ones, Bud Haiti, was here for 20 years.
Yep.
He said this is a guy who told him to fire Bruce Pearl and Bo Ryan too. So does this guy really have the best interests at heart?
Yeah, after a certain point, maybe it's you, dude.
Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, but if you have support from a good number of people, everybody's going to be able to put together their heads. You don't have to have, not everybody has to have money, but you have to have people who are willing to put their heads together and come up with ideas and support the program. And then you have an athletic director who's supposed to get that stuff done. It was supposed to make that vision happen. And a lot of these schools have no vision.
Well, think about this. Well, if you think about this for a second, I mean, come on. Look what Cleveland State had to deal with in the last years of John Perry. Basically, dude phoned it in. The only reason he stuck around for another year is so he could make sure that lacrosse got off the ground, which it did actually pretty well. But that was it. He was there. So the fact that so the fact that they got Mike Thomas in as their athletic director is probably a turning point for Cleveland State, but you got to undo the damage that John Perry sitting there twiddling his thumbs did, which is exactly what he did. Sit there and twiddle his freaking thumbs.
Sure.
And nobody did anything about it. Nobody. Because it's nobody's fault. Ever. But now that's over. So at the end, Cleveland State just basically did an overhaul on everything. Got a new AD, got a new basketball coach, getting a new president, and because Ronald Berkman is leaving, and Harlan Sands, he's coming over from Wharton, and he's going to be the new president. So I'm interested in seeing how that. I'm interested in seeing how that dynamic works, because you're talking about a guy like Mike Thomas, who he's here because there needed to be some changes within the athletic department. And, he's a young enough guy where if he indeed ends up, kind of turning things around, he could do the same thing as, say, a Lee Reed did, and then, seek life elsewhere. Now, whether that happens or not remains to be seen, but it's one of those things where I'm very interested in seeing how that goes. I don't know of too many other places that's going to happen. I don't know if that's a situation anywhere else. It's obviously not a situation it's obviously not the situation you have at Milwaukee. In fact, it sounds like anything but at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where you're thinking about it. So, and I don't know. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts within this conference that just don't make that aren't gonna. That really kind of. It's like a one step forward, two steps back. You get somebody. One step forward, you get a guy like Mike Thomas and Dennis Felton over at Cleveland State, and then you take it two steps back with whatever the hell's going on with Detroit.
Pretty much.
So I mean that's kind of the thing, really. I mean it's just one of those things where you look at it and it's like, well, do you think things are ever gonna change? And sometimes they do. Like for the example of Youngstown State. I mean, did you ever think that Youngstown State was going to get go from a guy like Jerry Slocum to a guy like Jared Calhoun?
I do think that Loyola Youngstown State was going to be able to hire somebody good, because I think that Youngstown State has a president that's engaged and a president.
Jim freaking Tressel, of course he is.
That's kind of my point. Exactly. Yeah. Is that this is a guy who is
because I guarantee you what happened was Jim Tressel, the pride of Youngstown. I mean, you're talking about the guy who basically made Youngstown State football what it is. Comes in as president. I guarantee you he spent the last few years looking at the basketball program, looking at Ron Strollo and saying, dude, what the hell is he doing here? What Jerry Slocum has overstayed his welcome, and it's time to go. So when he was able to finally get out of that last year of his contract, he finally let him go. And then and then looking around, he didn't have to look too far, because all he had to do was go down I-79 to get over to I-79 to Fairmont, West Virginia, and there Jared Calhoun was.
There are so many people who think that it's one thing that gets you there. And I don't want people to think that when I say things like, facilities are important, I don't want people to think that I'm saying that if you build it, they will come. I'm saying that facilities are part of it. The support of the university. When I say support from the community is most important, is that the support from the community gets you the other things.
Yes.
So you need to be able to.
One of the things that I did notice within that dynamic, within the Youngstown State dynamic, I mean, Youngstown State did, they once again, they didn't do that great this year. Shocking no one. You didn't think they were going to, but you saw that community aspect. You saw Calhoun all over it.
Yeah, and maybe he'll get it done. Maybe he'll get it done in time, but you have to have. You have to have people in that area respond to him, and nobody's going to be impressed by Beagley. The Beagley Center is not going to impress anybody. And then, beyond that, is if Jared Calhoun's the right guy, he has the support of the president. If he gets the support of the program, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Youngstown starts winning. I also think that as much as Jim Tressel supports him, I do think that at the end of the day, football is always going to be the king. So any extra dollar that Jared Calhoun's going to need, maybe it goes somewhere else. But then again, I also know that Loyola or Youngstown State's men's basketball program had a higher recruiting budget in 15-16 than our entire men's sub part of the athletic department for all men's sports. So maybe it's not spending money.
Which is interesting because when you look at Youngstown, when you look at Youngstown right now, Calhoun's cleaning house. all of the just this weekend.
Yes.
5. You had Braun Hartfield and Devin Haygood. They're transferring.
Tyree Robinson. And
Tyree Robinson.
Jacob Brown, right?
Yes.
And didn't Ferguson too?
He did. All of them, they all have one common theme. And what was that common theme? All of them were if I'm not mistaken, all of them were Slocum recruits.
That would make sense to me.
Haygood and Hartfield definitely were. Yeah. So the thought, I guess, is that, Jared Calhoun wants to get his guys in there, period.
Yeah.
And which is interesting because it's interesting because you see the same thing playing out at Cleveland State. Only difference being is all the guys that happen to be leaving Cleveland State are graduating. Yeah, Cleveland State had 6 seniors. Greatest gift Gary Waters ever gave Dennis Felton is immediate roster turnover.
Yeah.
And now you have 2 more who leave, and you only have 2. And as of right now, you only have 2 Gary Waters recruits out of Cleveland that are still at Cleveland State because Evan Claiborne just announced he was transferring. So you have Cash Thomas and Sean Christian, the last 2 left.
I will say too.
And then you look, but then you look at Youngstown where now you have a situation where they had quite a few of Slocum's recruits, but not anymore. So that tells it, I see kind of a sense. To me, in actually both situations, it lends a bit of sense of urgency. And oh, by the way, for somebody who desperately wants the Cleveland State Youngstown State rivalry to not be a race to the bottom, I applaud it. I mean, I want them both to be, if they're beating, if Youngstown State and Cleveland State are beating each other up, I want it to be at the top of the standings and not at the bottom of the standings, what it's been like for the last 3 years.
We have the problem that we need to have people who are willing to support the program. Cleveland State's biggest problem is
naturally
the same as it was before, is
always
they don't have somebody who's willing to do that at the moment. You need to be willing to get somebody, you need to be willing to speak up. You guys have this new president coming in.
Yes.
This person needs to hear from all of you. And this person needs to, and if you have,
boy, is he going to regret that?
Well, we had Mike Lovell.
I care. I mean,
we had a chancellor in Mike Lovell, who was just a fantastic dude. Really, truly good guy. And
I will say this, and I will say this again about Mike Thomas. And from the fans that I've talked to about Mike Thomas, they did mention that he was infinitely more responsive than John Perry ever was. John Perry basically had like a stack of form emails, and he just, changed it a little bit and sent them out. And that's what he did for probably the last 2 years of his time. Mike Thomas is not doing that. So there's a little bit more engagement.
Anytime you have anybody coming out of retirement, I was worried just how much they're committed to being there. Because if they really wanted to work, would they have retired in the first place?
Yeah, most of the people. Yeah, that's don't. Yeah, I was never. Yeah, I know that's.
That doesn't mean that I don't think somebody's going to be. That doesn't mean I don't think somebody's committed to the, to where whatever the. I don't think they're not committed to their job.
The reason Perry was there because somewhere along the lines, John Perry was able to convince somebody at Cleveland State, presumably Ronald Berkman, that he'd be the guy to bring in. He'd be the guy to bring in more donations or some crap like that. To his credit. To his only credit, the only credit I will ever give him is that John Perry was able to find the money where he needed it, albeit at the expense of the baseball program.
And get out of the way.
Yeah, and basically do nothing. I mean, he made sure that the books were balanced, and that was about it. That was his purpose in life, essentially. And then Mike Thomas comes in and said, "Holy crap, we're not bringing anything in. We got to fix this." I mean, seriously, he talked about that too. A couple of the publications here in Cleveland where he was saying, "Yeah, we got to think about improving our revenue streams because they flatlined under Perry. I mean, just flatlined." So I don't know. I think that's gonna. Again, that's probably going to be a work in progress.
What is that from? That's from not having support.
No, not at all.
And if you don't have administrators in the athletic department and the university administration that people care about, you're going to lose. People that don't buy into their vision, people that don't buy into what they're doing, you're going to have people lose. And if you lie to people, and if you straight up, go against them without selling them on what you're trying to do, you can end up screwing over, everything you're trying to do, and also everything that your program could be. And obviously, I've started to kind of sneak a little bit of a little bit of brawn smack in there. But
I do see in certain instances where there is within the league, I do see some kind of instances of that progress being made. I mean, Cleveland State is definitely an example. I would go as far to say, I know you probably disagree, but I would go as far to say as that is something that I see in Youngstown State as well.
It's too early.
Whether it's sustained is, again, matter of it's a matter of the optics for me, at least in both instances. And if you'd have asked me about the optics this time last year at Cleveland State, I'd have told you were crazy. But the optics for both schools, at least to me, are better than they have been in years past, which is sorely needed within this conference.
Yeah, things are looking up.
Thing. Do we see that? Are we going to see that in Detroit? No. Will we see that in Milwaukee? I think without saying too much more, you'll probably say probably not.
At the moment, I don't know. I mean, Pat Baldwin seems to be a nice guy. I haven't met him, and that's another thing. Like, I've kind of lost my spot, and that's okay. Like,
then you find an X factor. Then you find then
I don't think people buy into him. You have to have people buy what you're selling. It's a sales job. It's a sales job. You have to if you want people's support, you have to get them to buy what you're selling.
Well, and keep in mind too, we're also going to have to add another wrinkle in here because Jeff Kanye left Oakland, and when without getting in too much into that, so you look at it. I look at it from a standpoint.
People buy into Greg Campy there.
Yeah.
So the athletic director is not entirely important. As long as the athletic director doesn't get in the way, as long as the athletic director, and not to say that not to say that Greg Campy is doing all the work. He obviously is. At Oakland as an athletic program, top to bottom is, I would say, the healthiest overall program in the conference.
Question.
And the healthiest and strongest as far as success. It's when I say that, I mean that Greg Campy believes that Oakland can be great because he's done it there, and he can, and he gets people to buy into it
forever.
I don't. Nobody in Milwaukee's buying it. At Green Bay, people are kind of, from what I gather, will. Link Darner, they keep waiting for the shoe to drop, that they got this one tournament run out of him, and that they're worried that he's already looking for the door. I mean, he did interview for other jobs from reports.
I'm sure he did.
So they're all worried that he's looking for the door, and that's the downside of getting of having that person that can sell being the coach. Is that coaches, when they succeed in college basketball, it's Division I college basketball. There's a big spotlight on it when you get to the NCAA tournament.
The one thing that here's the thing, though, and this is probably the one thing that the Horizon League has lapsed, and I think we'll close out after this. The one thing the Horizon League in general, the coaching in the Horizon League has lapsed, is that kind of that lack of that internal infrastructure, specifically within men's basketball, where it's if you have a coach that is good enough, he's going to seek life elsewhere. We've seen it so many times. The concern has always been, do you have the infrastructure in place like a Valpo, where you had a Bryce Drew who left, but then you had one of his assistants who could fill that role, and you don't see that within the Horizon League. And that's the problem. Given the fact that you have a Horizon League, you have a mid-major. It is almost a given that if you bring in somebody young enough, if you bring in a young coach who is coming into a mid-major program, that it is more than likely that, unless you're a Greg Campy who's been there since the beginning of time, that he's going to seek life elsewhere. And that nobody in the Horizon League plans for that contingency. They just basically ride it till the wheels fall off, and then then everybody acts all shocked and stuff. When holy cow, there's nobody to replace this guy, so we got to scramble around and find somebody new.
When you have an athletic directors, chancellors, they will last longer if they're good. And maybe you don't keep them around forever. Maybe they only last 4 to 5 years. But if they do well, you can do fine. And as long as you care, as long as the people who are there forever. Because remember, coaches, ads, presidents, chancellors, these people are all stewards of your program. Yeah. They're not here for a long time. No, the people who are here for a long time are us. So what's important is that you don't abandon things, like John and Phil and all these. Don't abandon your program, because the last thing your program needs is for you to say, throw your hands up and go be a Youngstown State fan. It's not because, it's not because they have this, they're just sick of it and they don't want to give the money. Don't give the money. I don't have season tickets right now. So maybe
that's a whole other conversation. You know what? It's funny.
But you have to be involved.
Yeah. And so in closing, so this is where we'll be closing out. It's funny you mention that, because next week, actually the next 2 episodes, because I figure this is going to be too big for just one episode. Jimmy, it's on. At least the goal is it's on. We're going to have, what are we calling it? The first ever HoriZone Roundtable fan battle royale.
We'll come up with a better name for that.
No, I think we're going to stick with that. If you can come up with a better name, you better hurry up, because I want to put some promo videos together, and they're going to be odds. They're going to be like the most ridiculous things on the planet. Let me tell you. So the goal is we're going to have 8. We're going to have representative. The goal is, in fact, this has to happen, or none of this has happened. We're going to have a representative from each of the. We're going to have a fan from each one of these schools. So right now, we're almost there.
We have most of them. That's okay. We'll figure out people.
Yeah.
Hey, Green Bay and the IUPUI fans, get yourselves on, because we need a couple people.
The invitation is open. So, all right. So until then, I guess we'll see you later, and that will be it. And again, you can find us wherever good podcasts are found.
Hey, well, I do have one thing before you shut it down.
Yes.
You think that John Brannon is going to be the guy that he's going to get Xavier looking at him for that job? I'm going to give you a different name. I'm going to give you a different name. Now? Yes.
Okay.
Scott Nagy.
Seriously, you think Scott Nagy? Really?
I seriously believe.
We'll have this conversation next week because that sounds like a thing that's going to happen. So.
Hey, I called that Laval Jordan was going to Butler when Thad Matta announced his retirement at Ohio State.
Yeah, all right.
So maybe I'm going to touch, or maybe I was just lucky. We're going to find out, Horizon League fans.
Oh, Lord. This is going to be messed up, and it's going to be epic, too. So, all right, we'll see you guys next time.